look, as we get ready for this upcoming Grizzlies season, I looked at something. The AllStar game in February of 2024 is being played in a familiar city for one of the Grizzlies' best players. Sort of could be a homecoming of sorts. Could Desmond Bane of the Memphis Grizzlies play in Indiana in 2024 for the NBA All-Star game? It's possible. But let's talk about it right now. Coming up on Locked On Grizzlies.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. I am your host, Damichael Cole, beat writer for the Commercial Appeal right here in Memphis, Tennessee. Appreciate you for tuning in to another day of Locked On Grizzlies on today. Remember that today's episode is brought to you by Jase Medical. Empower yourself when you purchase a Jase Case, providing you with a personal supply of 5 antibiotics that treat 50-plus infections. Get yours today at jasemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com. Appreciate you for tuning in to Locked On Grizzlies. Make sure you continue to tune in. Remember, we are everywhere. Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you listen, wherever you watch, Locked On Grizzlies is there. So we appreciate you for tuning in today. Continue to like, rate, comment, subscribe, all of those good things as well. We got a good thing to talk about here on today. And we're going to focus on one of the star Grizzlies players. Most of you will agree that there's sort of a big three right now on the Grizzlies. And some of you may throw a couple other names in there. I know a lot of people are fond of Steven Adams and putting his name in that conversation. Some people are fond of a guy maybe like Marcus Smart or whatever the case may be. But the three guys where there's pretty much zero conversation on this topic about, the three guys who are pretty much earned, 9-figure deals with the Memphis Grizzlies are Jaren Jackson Jr., Desmond Bane, and Ja Morant. Ja Morant will be, a very big part of the Grizzlies this season when he returns from suspension. Jaren Jackson Jr. will be a huge part of the Grizzlies because he's the reigning defensive player of the year. But we want to see that offensive jump, right? That's what a lot of the conversation is going to be about for him this season. But then there's Desmond Bane. The third wheel in some people's mind, but he's a guy, he's got a lot to prove this year. He just got a lot of money, $200 million type money on his contract. And when Desmond Bane got that contract, a lot of people said, does he deserve that? What has Desmond Bane done? One of the main critiques thrown out there in his direction was he hasn't even made an All-Star game yet. But then I thought about it. Why not now? Why can't this be the year that Desmond Bane announces himself as All-Star shooting guard for the Memphis Grizzlies? Why can't it be the year? I think it's possible. I think it's very possible. We're going to break that down here. And if you're looking at the Locked On Grizzlies show today on YouTube, you see our 3 bullet points. Desmond Bane as a 2024 All-Star, the possibilities of that. We're going to talk about that in the first segment. The second segment, we're going to talk about the obstacles that will be in place for him as he tries to reach that goal. There's some other Grizzlies awards. There's some other guys that could potentially reach award status on the Grizzlies as well. Going to briefly discuss those things and potentially dive deeper into them on a future episode of Locked On Grizzlies. But if you look at the list, you might say, well, why can Desmond Bane be an All-Star? Well, I want to throw the most obvious thing out there other than, no Ja Morant. The most obvious thing is Desmond Bane last year started the season before his injury, remember? 25 points a game. I think it was around 5 assists a game as well. 25 and 5 as a 2 guard, that's all-star numbers, especially on a team like the Grizzlies that's finished with the number 2 seed, the last 2 seeds. So let's get into it. The most obvious reason to me, we say, how can Desmond Bane be an all-star in 2024? No Ja Morant for 25 games at least. You know what that means to me? Desmond Bane is going to be the feature guy for the Grizzlies offensively. That's good and bad. The good, of course, is the obvious. He's going to get more shots. He's going to get ample opportunity to show off his full game. I like the way that he improved. Recently in his career, he's getting to the free throw line more, using his physicality, using those broad shoulders, that as well. But he's also going to draw those big assignments. Instead of Mikal Bridges guarding Ja Morant, he's going to go over there and guard Desmond Bane. Instead of, a Paul George guarding Ja Morant, or instead of, whoever, Herb Jones, whoever the top guy is, they're likely going to switch from guarding potentially Ja Morant to guard Desmond Bane. So he's going to get a lot of the toughest assignments that teams have to offer. But you know what? That is how you put yourself on a pedestal. When you're playing against, the New Orleans Pelicans and people see you making three-pointers against Herb Jones, that's going to catch the eye. If you're playing against the Milwaukee Bucks and people see Desmond Bane do the little crossover pullback move that he has, and you make a three-pointer over Drew Holiday, it's going to catch some eyes. So with all that being said, no Ja Morant for at least 25 games puts Desmond Bane in a position to be a feature scorer. We already talked about the subtraction of Dillon Brooks. Ja Morant and Dillon Brooks were a huge part of the shot selection on the team. That's two guys who pretty much were going to take 14, 15 shots every single night. Now gone. Marcus Smart, you insert him in place of Dillon Brooks, you're going to get a guy who is more selective as a shooter. Certain games he's going to take a lot of shots, but there are going to be other games Marcus Smart takes 6 or 7 shots. So his shots won't come out at the volume of a Dillon Brooks. But guess what? Those shots have to go somewhere. And why not Desmond Bane? He showed last season he can still play, at a high level, even when he was hurt. And not only that, the volume of shots went up, and he still maintained took close to the same level as a three-point shooter and just an overall player on the court as well. So I think that's a good reason as well. Another reason I want to talk about is the added spacing that he's going to see. It kind of goes off to our same point, especially in the first 25 games. For all the things that Grizzlies fans have loved about Ja Morant, and they love about they love about Ja Morant, and they have loved about Dillon Brooks, is both were very spotty shooters, and in the case of Dillon Brooks, was very much below league average. Desmond Bane now, you put in Marcus Smart, who's going to be hovering around league average, and we'll see who the other starter ends up being. But I can tell you who's going to get a lot of those minutes, whether he starts or not, and that's Luke Kennard. Putting Desmond Bane and Luke Kennard on the floor together, that is going to be a secret weapon this season. You know how the Warriors had a death lineup, and you know how the Nuggets starting lineup was just tough to combat, and especially when they insert, Bruce Brown in for Mike Porter Jr. in certain late games. Putting Luke Kennard and Desmond Bane on the floor together is a cheat code, because it's hard to guard one of them when they're on the floor. And when you have two of them on the floor, the amount of spacing that the other player can create for the other guy in terms of three-point shooting, you can't help off of Luke Kennard. You can't help off of Desmond Bane. But when one guy's spacing the floor on one side of the floor and the other guy's spacing on the other side of the floor, and you have a potentially later on in the season a Ja Morant, or you have a Marcus Smart, or you have a Derrick Rose driving to the rim, somebody's going to have to collapse down, unless you want to bring the big man over, and then boom, easy layup for Steven Adams, or boom, easy layup for Jaren Jackson Jr. You got to figure something out. It's tough. The point is, Desmond Bane and Luke Kennard, we already talked about this, the two-man lineup of those two on the Grizzlies, second highest net rating. The only two-man lineup that fared better was Santi Aldama and Jaren Jackson Jr. But when Desmond Bane and Luke Kennard were on the floor together, we saw it in the playoffs, we saw it late in the regular season, we just got a glimpse of it pretty much last season. This year, I think you're going to see a higher dosage of the Grizzlies using that lineup. It's going to unlock levels of Desmond Bane's game, just like it does for Luke Kennard. Having Luke Kennard on the floor, a guy that teams absolutely, positively can't help off of, will create more scoring opportunities for Desmond Bane. Lastly, I want to just talk about, a combination of things. Number one, he's healthy. And two, how that affects his playing style. And that is Desmond Bane. And then three, how that makes him a more versatile player. All of those three are one and the same because they all go together. They all go together for Desmond Bane's game. If you think now, remember, last season Desmond Bane was injured. Played pretty much the last 40 games of the season with an injured big toe. And it bothered him for the rest of the year. But you probably couldn't tell that much. Like, outside of him talking about it, you really couldn't tell. I mean, I knew that, he had to wear different shoes. You've watched him early in the season or in the last couple years. He used to wear the Kyries. He used to wear the PGs. But he had to wear LeBron 20 signature shoes last season, basically because they were the only shoes that could combat his injured toe. That was the shoe that he had to wear at the time, even though he didn't, quote unquote, like the shoe. He had to wear it because of the injury. So now you factor in a healthy Desmond Bane. Now we're talking about his playing style, right? If you watched Desmond Bane last season, a big improvement in his game was his burst and getting to the rack. The highest two-point field goal percentage of his career up to this point. His mid-range shooting had improved. He was getting to the basket forcefully, and as a result, he was getting to the free throw line. We all know he's a great free throw shooter. Now he's going to be healthy doing that. Like, even though he got to the rim a lot last season and finished better, he still wasn't great by league standards. He was not a great finisher. Now, there's probably always going to be some type of limitations with Desmond Bane. We all know the short arm jokes and things like that, and he's not exactly jumping out of the gym. But at the end of the day, with Desmond Bane and a healthy toe next season, I feel like in transition, where the Grizzlies like to play, where Desmond Bane, as we've seen, we call it downhill Des. He gets the rebound, he goes coast to coast, and it's 2 points before you can blink. I think we're going to see that even a little bit more now that the big toe's healthy going into this upcoming season. The versatility speaks for itself. A healthier Desmond Bane means more on the ball Desmond Bane, I think, means a harder him running off of those pin downs and curls and getting, to his spots even easier with less stress, with less struggle, on that foot. So I want to see the versatility that Desmond Bane provides as well, because we know one thing about Derrick Rose and Marcus Smart, who are likely to be the top 2 point guards while Ja Morant is out. Both of those guys can play off the ball too. They've actually done it in parts of their careers. So excited to see how that works out. But it won't all be peaches and cream. If Desmond Bane is to be an all-star, there are a lot of obstacles that he'll have to overcome. So we're going to talk about that next on Locked On Grizzlies. But before we get to that, I got to talk to you about Jase Medical, because Jase Medical right now, you can use the promo code and get $20 off. And quite simply, everyone should be empowered to care for themselves and their loved ones during the unexpected. That's why Jase Medical offers the Jase Case. Listen to this. The Jase Case provides five life-saving antibiotics for emergency use and gives you a peace of mind so that you are not just hoping that you have access to medication in emergency. Jase Medical makes sure that you have medication in hand. Jase Medical is simple. They handle everything from online evaluation to licensed pharmacy medication, delivery, and ongoing consultation and care. Don't get caught being unprepared. Get $20 off on these life-saving antibiotics today from Jase Medical by using my code Locked On at jasemedical.com, Locked On LOCKED at checkout on jasemedical.com. And remember, because I want to make sure you guys got this right. If you're on YouTube, you see it at the bottom of the screen right now. And if you're not, Jase Medical is JASE medical.com. Coming up on Locked On Grizzlies, we're going to talk about Desmond Bane again. What can prevent him from being an all-star? Stay tuned for that. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies, everyone. I am Damichael Cole, beat writer for the Commercial Appeal right here in Memphis, Tennessee, and appreciate you for tuning into Locked On Grizzlies on today's Desmond Bane heavy episode. The All-Star game will be at Gainbridge Fieldhouse this year. If you're unfamiliar, that's where the Indiana Pacers play their home games, which is roughly an hour away from Richmond, Indiana, which is where Desmond Bane prepped in high school, made a big name for himself. And if you kept up with my coverage at thecommercialappeal.com, you've seen that we've written about it the last 2 seasons, how kids from the Boys and Girls Club, Girls Inc., all these Boys and Girls Club, all these organizations for kids have been able to go see Desmond Bane play in the last 2 years at Gainesville Fieldhouse from the Richmond area. He is huge there. And wouldn't it be great if more kids to go and see Desmond Bane in an all-star atmosphere where he can kind of interact with them a little bit longer than the 10 minutes or 20 minutes after a game when he's at Gainbridge Fieldhouse during the season and the Grizzlies got to hurry up and get the road. But if that's to happen, if Desmond Bane is to be an all-star, there are some pretty big obstacles. We'll get to the most obvious one last because I gotta say the best for last, of course. But you talk about why he won't be an all-star this season. The first reason that I want to talk about is we got to talk about Desmond Bane on the court and where he needs to improve. And not only where he needs to improve, what the team needs to improve. So the first thing, and I touched on this earlier real briefly, is the Grizzlies got to win. Me and Joe, as the season gets closer, we're going to break down some things, and we're going to do some season predictions and whatnot. But the first 25 games, as I touched on, are going to be really tough. So if Desmond Bane can keep the Grizzlies in the hunt, that 25-game stretch without Ja Morant, if the Grizzlies can win a lot of games, as January gets here, and remember, the first All-Star voting is usually second week January, first week in January, which is probably a week after Ja Morant gets back. That'll be good. That'll be perfect timing for Desmond Bane. At that point, the Grizzlies will only have played, I think 2, 3, maybe 3 national TV games. But still, it'll be good to know that Desmond Bane is a big reason why the Grizzlies are winning and still in the hunt, because winning is a big part of getting the All-Star votes. The second thing that stands out to me when we talk about how Desmond Bane needs to improve if he's going to become an All-Star is the isolation scoring has to get better. I've touched on it in the past. We've seen these kind of stages of improvement at Desmond Bane through his first 3 years. Remember his first year, mainly a spot-up shooting guy. Second season became more of a scoring threat just by, adding to his three-point efficiency, did a little bit of on-the-ball play, and then his third year really took it up a notch, on the ball, right? He played a small amount of point guard in his second season. Third year, played a lot more on and off the ball, and as a result, averaged over 4 assists per game. Now, as we go into this next year, how can he take that to another level? Not just from an assist standpoint, but from an isolation, from a creativity standpoint. Because the assists show me that the creation is there. But if you look at Desmond Bane's isolation scoring numbers, pretty much at this point of his career, especially going back to last season, his first season averaging more than 20 points per game in the NBA, he pretty much finished the season average 21 points per game while finishing in the bottom third percentile of the NBA in isolation scoring. I think he hovered around 33% amongst NBA players in isolation scoring percentage. So with that all being said, he kind of scored a lot without being an efficient isolation scorer. And not only did it show in his game, it showed in Grizzlies games. Remember, Ja's going to be out 25 games. And I said earlier, the Grizzlies have to win. A big reason, not just last season, but if you go back a couple years ago, I talked about that Golden State series a lot a couple seasons ago as well. But big reasons that the Grizzlies have lost a lot of games, the games where either Ja isn't playing or even when Ja is playing and he's struggling down the stretch, is they haven't had that second guy who can be that isolation scorer. And it hurt the team this past season. It hurt in the playoffs when the Lakers, you saw Game 6. I don't have to spell it out for you. And you saw Game 4 too. Both were very ugly offensive performances for the Grizzlies. Both were very ugly. And a big part of that is the half-court offense was ugly. And a big part about being an efficient half-court offense is having 2, sometimes 3 guys you can get the ball to and say, get out of the way. They got it. The Grizzlies, The numbers, efficiency-wise, will tell you that Jaren Jackson Jr. was that guy last season. The eyeballs will tell you that Ja Morant has been that guy the last couple of years. So where does Desmond Bane fit in that equation? We've seen a little bit of it. He has the step back, like the Kyrie Irving type, step back shot, or the James Harden step back. Like, he has that in the bag. He can go to that move and create and make, that one of his signature moves. He also has like the snatch back that I like. We only saw him pull it out a lot in games last season when he was really feeling himself. Go between the legs. He'll do the two quick step backs and bam, in rhythm 3-point shot. And he made it a lot. So there's some stuff in his bag that shows me that Desmond Bane can improve. Desmond Bane can become a good NBA isolation scorer. But we got to see it consistently, and we got to see it in the fourth quarter. We got to see it when the Grizzlies need that dagger, and it's a 96-96 game with 13 seconds on the clock. We need to see Desmond Bane say, get out of my way, and go to work. It's in the bag. I think it's very possible that he could be that guy, but that's what the Grizzlies need to happen. And the last point that I want to hover on is the math. That's the most obvious one. That's the one you're probably thinking about. The math isn't, it's not really in his favor. Not really in his favor. I looked at it for the last 2 years. The last 2 years, 7 players in the Western Conference have made the NBA All-Star game as guards. 7 in each of the last 2 seasons. I'm going to throw some names out here, and quite frankly, these aren't even all of the top names. These are just the 11 names that came to mind when I thought about the biggest obstacles for Desmond Bane being an All-Star. Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving, Devin Booker, Bradley Beal, Anthony Edwards, De'Aaron Fox, Stephen Curry, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Damian Lillard, Paul George, Jamal Murray. That's 11 guys. If Desmond Bane is an All-Star, 5 of those guys probably won't get in. And it might be more than that. If there's a name amongst those 11 that I didn't mention, that at the guard position that could potentially be an All-Star, it'll be more than that. But at least 5 of those guys. I'm going to run through the names again. Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving, Devin Booker, Bradley Beal, Anthony Edwards, De'Aaron Fox, Steph Curry, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Damian Lillard, Paul George, Jamal Murray. All those guys are very disturbing, very deserving of being All-Stars. I think pretty much all of them, I think Jamal Murray has been, but pretty much the rest of them have been All-Stars at this point of their careers. The odds are stacked against them. The odds are stacked against Desmond Bane. We know every year injuries play a role to this. I think Anthony Edwards got in last season as an injury replacement. Ja Morant ended up being a starter as an injury replacement. Like, those things happen. So we'll see how everything unfolds on that end. But it's a lot of names on that list that Desmond Bane's going to have to beat out. And it's going to be tough sledding for him to do so. We're not going to talk necessarily about the All-Star game in our next segment. But in the next segment, we're going to talk about some other Grizzlies who could possibly be recognized at the end of the season. Briefly, coming up next on Locked On Grizzlies. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies, everyone. I'm Damichael Cole, beat writer of the Commercial Appeal here in Memphis, Tennessee. I want to appreciate you and tuning in for Locked On Grizzlies today. Today was a Desmond Bane heavy-themed episode. Desmond Bane's a great player, wonderful guy, a guy I love covering. Love the man he's becoming on and off the floor. Desmond Bane, if you're familiar with off the floor, he became a father last year, and you could see the growth in how, just something like fatherhood has really, honed him. He feels it's almost like he has more to play for. He has bigger things to play for. And I think you'll see, a carryover effect as he goes into his second year playing, as a father this upcoming NBA season. But we talked enough about Desmond Bane in this episode of Locked On Grizzlies. We got to talk about some other guys. And I want to talk about these guys for too long because, quite frankly, me and Joe could potentially do a deep dive episode on this subject later. And this is just simply to get into some Grizzlies awards that could potentially be won this season. I don't think there's a lot. MVP, I think, is not in the cards. this year. And, rookie of the year, I'll get to that one. Stay tuned. I got a trick up my sleeve for that one. I'll get to it. Rookie of the year. But it's not a lot of options, out there with the awards. But let's get into the awards that the Grizzlies, I think, possibly can win in terms of the players. Quite frankly, I just think, after last season, what Taylor Jenkins did, leading that team to a number 2 seed, despite, the Steven Adams injury, despite, Desmond Bane's injury, Jaren Jackson Jr., starting the season injured. I feel like if all those injuries, Brandon Clark, torn Achilles early in March. I feel like if all those injuries weren't enough for people to say, well, you know what? Even though the Grizzlies repeated success from a number 2 seed standpoint, still had a pretty good year based on coaching a team above expectations. If that wasn't enough last season, I'm out of it. I don't think Taylor Jenkins might have to outpace the 96 Bulls or the 2016 Golden State Warriors. Yeah, he might have to outpace one of those squads to get a Coach of the Year award. But that's neither here nor there. I'm done talking about that topic. The first one is the most obvious one, and I think that's Jaren Jackson Jr. and Marcus Smart for Defensive Player of the Year. Simple reason is, well, they both won it before. I mean, that's the most simple reason for adding them 2 guys to this name. I think the Grizzlies will put Marcus Smart in a position to be a very versatile defender, like they did with Dylan Brooks. He'll get the opportunity to guard the bigger, more physical guys. He'll get the opportunity to guard the quick guards. And quite frankly, he's going to get the opportunity every night to go against the best perimeter option. He's going to be put in a position on this Grizzlies team to dominate in his side. And Jaren Jackson Jr., well, he's already won the award. I don't have to explain to you how he can do that for the Grizzlies again. Another one that I think the Grizzlies have a sneaky good shot at is Luke Kennard for 6th Man of the Year. Remember, I am of the thought that Luke could start the first 25 games of the season, and I know a lot of people have that thought for him as well. And then some people think, hey, bring him off the bench and bring one of the more natural guys, a John Conchar, a Zaire Williams, a David Roddy, a Jake LaRavia, one of the more natural small forwards. Let those guys start in this part. But at the end of the day, no matter if he's starting, he's coming off the bench, I think Luke Kennard is going to be playing a lot of minutes. I think he's going to play a lot of minutes with the Grizzlies. I think he's going to see some closing lineup minutes in certain games when he's very hot. And I think we can see a lot of him and Desmond Bane on the floor together, especially while Ja Morant is out. Luke Kennard's numbers are going to be really good, I think. And if his numbers are what I think they could be, he's going to spend most of his season, regardless of what happens, with the Ja Morant situation, if everyone is healthy. And what I mean by that is even if he starts the first 25, 26 games of the season, whatever the case may be, even if he starts that many games, well, guess what? He's still more than likely going to play 50-plus games coming off the bench, which is more than half of the season, and probably going to be 2/3 of his season off the bench. I think that if he starts early in the season, that could be a big boost to his numbers. If he comes off the bench early in the season, guess what? Still going to be a big boost to his number because I think he's going to be closing a lot of games. The shooting, another year, a full season in the system, full off season. I think Luke Kennard could be one of those guys who comes off the bench as a real streaky scorer who not only makes an impact from scoring off the bench, but his net rating numbers should be really good. If last March and April were any indication, they will be. That's another one that I'm really keeping an eye on. Now we're going to get into a couple wild cards. Those other two, if you're a betting person out there, if you're going over to FanDuel, one of our sponsors, wouldn't hurt you probably to throw a bet in the direction of one of those. These two, now you're talking about some real long shots. I want to start with Zaire Williams. And you're like, what in the world could Zaire Williams possibly win next season? Well, he could put his name in the conversation for most improved. So, yeah, I know some of you are laughing right now because you've already turned the page on the whole Zaire Williams thing. And, yeah, I know. But then there are some of you out there like, Damichael, that makes some sense. Yeah, it makes sense because last season he was hurt. Rookie year, we saw the signs. You saw the signs. I saw the signs late in the season of a guy who could be a very productive role player. And I'm going to use the same criteria that I used for Luke Kennard. Remember, that small forward spot right now is for the taking. While Ja Morant is suspended 25 games, that spot will be for the taking. There hasn't at least been any guarantee. We'll talk to Taylor Jenkins next week at Media Day. We'll get the full clarity on it. But there hasn't been any just direct indication that Marcus Smart and Ja Morant will both be in the starting lineup alongside Desmond Bane. It hasn't been directly stated. So as long as that's the case, there is a chance that Marcus Smart, when Ja gets back, there's a chance that Marcus Smart comes off the bench and the starting small forward position is filled with a more natural small forward. And if that's to happen, I think that means one of the young guys, Jake Arabia, David Roddy, Zaire Williams, came and took the spot by the reins and ran with it. If that's to happen, I think Zaire Williams will probably be the guy who could potentially do that. Remember, I've been high on Jake Arabia. I think he could be a potential decent fill-in guy for that role. But Zaire Williams, when you talk about upside, a guy who could start and possibly give you 13, 14 points a game on decent efficiency overall. We'll see what the three-point shooting looks like. But if you talk about decent efficiency overall, Zaire Williams can probably do that, especially now, full off season where he kind of was load managed. Hopefully he's healthy and ready to roll. But he's a guy who could sneak his way into one of the award conversation, and that's the most improved award conversation. This third one is not really an NBA. I mean, it's fourth one. Not really an NBA award, but the Grizzlies won it in recent years. Kenneth Lofton Jr. last year. G League Rookie of the Year, right? Why can't G.G. Jackson make the Grizzlies repeat in the same area? Why can't G.G. Jackson do it? Yeah, I dig deep in the bag for that one. But I'm telling you what, watching G.G. Jackson, the skill is there. I don't have to tell you. You watched Summer League with me, yeah. The numbers were a little erratic at times and all over the place, but that man, 6'9", 220, the ability to get to the rack like that, the turnaround, the fadeaway, the three-point shooting stroke, offensively, that guy is so skilled. And you got to remember, he's only 18. Still, he's going to be 18 in October when the season starts. He's going to be 18 in November. And I think in December, at some point, he finally turns 19 around the time that Ja Morant is projected to get back. That's when he'll turn 19 years old. So basically, the point is G.G. Jackson is going to be in a position where he can grow and grow fast. He's on a two-way contract. The Grizzlies will then let him spend a lot of time down there with the Memphis Hustle. And we'll see what he does with that opportunity. I think he can really score. I think it's it's going to be a prime opportunity for him to show that, hey, I belong in this league as a scorer and I can hold my own. I'm looking forward to seeing if G.G. Jackson can hold his own in those situations against the Memphis Grizzlies, because quite frankly, there's going to be opportunity for him to win G League Rookie of the Year. So we'll see how that goes. It worked out for Kenneth Lofton Jr. last season on a two-way contract. Now G.G. Jackson is the next super talented offensive player who has a chance to do the same for the Memphis Grizzlies. Thanks for making Locked On Grizzlies your first listen each and every day. Speaking of every day, my everydayers out there, tomorrow on the show, me and Joe Mullinax will be back together. We got a fun few things to really talk about. So make sure you stay tuned for that episode as well. But quite frankly, you might be wondering, well, Damichael, do you think Desmond Bane is going to be an all-star? I think it's going to be tough on him. I really do. I think it's really going to be tough. I think the health of a lot of those players will be a factor. If a couple guys goes down, I think he's going to be directly right there in the conversation. And of the previous awards that I mentioned, of course, Jaren Jackson Jr. is the best candidate, but G.G. Jackson, man, I'm telling you, most people know I'm high on that dude. I think there's some real talent right there in that bag. But thank you for making Locked On Grizzlies your listen. Remember, we're free and available wherever you get podcasts. Once again, I'm Damichael Cole. We'll see you next time on